So welcome everybody, welcome back to season 1, episode 4.
Yeah, I know.
Of the Therapy Aunt. How exciting. I am Zanny from Enchanted Circle.
And I'm Audrey from Akili Bora.
And we are the Therapy
Aunts.
Welcome back. It's great to have you all here. We have had people filling in the Google form, so just a reminder, if anybody does want to take part in our show by writing into us, sharing your mental health stories or struggles or questions, then please do get in touch.
We are reading your questions. We are talking to people as we meet them wherever we are, asking them what their questions may be, what topics they think they might want to discuss. Sometimes we recognize it can be difficult to put thoughts down because there is a certain level of reality with writing or typing. The brain is an interesting organ. There is a level of detachment. If I can't see it, it doesn't exist. If I don't speak it, it doesn't exist. If I don't acknowledge it, maybe it'll go away. So if that is one of you, to let you know, as long as it's running around in there, it's going to bother you. It's going to come back and ask you, poke. It's like an itch. It starts a little itch. And then you think, I'm not going to scratch. And the more you ignore it, the more urgent and insistent it becomes. And before you know it, you could be, So, yeah.
And we've said often, no question, no query, no experience is too small. If it's bothering you, if you've got that itch and there's something that's really bothering you, then please do write in, because there's no doubt that it's bothering many, many more people. You have sent us feedback saying how much that this is already in 4 episodes supporting you and helping you through your own challenges. We really appreciate you and being in this space with us, and we're glad that it's coming through and actually helping people, because that's all we wanted. We're so passionate. We're psychotherapists and hypnotherapists ourselves, and we're so passionate, not only as people who share space and look after people that are struggling, but as two people that I can probably share this openly, that have experienced mental health struggles ourselves. Everybody has mental health. It could be low, it could be high, it could be managed, but we all have it. So we are all responsible for helping each other through that. We're human. So yeah, we're pleased to have you back, and it's going well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share and comment. That helps us show up, it helps people see us, and it helps us to continue our process of sharing a space to help people to come together, to build a community where mental health isn't taboo, it isn't hidden, it's right there in front of you for you to look at and see.
That's right, and that's our goal. Our goal is to get mental health out there in the public, talked about every day, because we all have a mental state. Happiness is a mental state. Sadness is a mental state. Anxiety is a mental state. As long as you are a human being, you have a mental state. And actually, as long as you're an animal, even the animals have mental states, dogs, cats. So if you're living, breathing, you have a mental state. And we are taking the mental health conversation out of the cupboard onto the kitchen counter. Let's talk about it. Enough of ignoring it. It's that itch that we've been ignoring, and you can see now it is pulsing and forcing its way out into the public. So grab a seat, grab a water, grab a fan. If the topic is too hot, you can cool yourself down. Get a blanket, to weigh yourself down, to ground yourself. Make sure that you're comfortable, but pull up and let's talk about it. Let's share, let's have a conversation. Sharing is caring, and this is a perfect example of how that is so true. If you share a problem, solve a top problem.
Problem shared is a problem half.
Thank you.
It says, yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Problem shared is a problem halved.
Yes.
So yeah, pull up a chair and listen in. Audrey, you've got our letter today.
I do, yes. I'm going to read out the letter from today. It says, Dear Therapy Aunts, thank you so much for your contribution in bringing light to the importance of mental health, especially in today's society, and reducing the negative connotations that comes from having these conversations. So thank you very much. My dilemma. I have been working at my current job for close to 2 years, 5 if you include my training. I enjoy it and find it fulfilling and inspiring. I have always suffered from imposter syndrome as far as I can remember. But since August of last year, these feelings of imposter syndrome have gotten worse. I have now gotten to the point where if I am off for more than a day or 2, or I come back from annual leave, then I can feel an anxiety attack coming on the night before, to the point where I consider calling off sick and can feel myself start to hyperventilate. I can stop the thoughts that I am not good enough for this job, but I fear that I am going to miss something that will harm someone or make my colleagues think that I shouldn't have qualified and been given the job. Consciously, I know these thoughts are irrational, especially as I have been given positive feedback. However, the irrational part of my brain overfixates on the negative. It also makes me overfixate on whether this is truly my purpose and has made me consider quitting my job more than a few times. Thank you for reading my dilemma thank you for reading and sorry for the long dilemma. From your number 1 fan.
Oh.
I know. Well, first of all, thank you for being a fan. And thank you very much for writing in. That was a very open and vulnerable. Thank you. That's a word. So that was a very vulnerable writing. And so well done to you for actually putting yourself out there and trusting us with your vulnerability, because it is not easy. It is not easy putting yourself out there, putting your thoughts out there. And that's what the conversation that we were having about, if it's sitting around in your mind, it's a big step to acknowledge it to yourself, number 1, and then to put it out there for somebody else to hear it. That is a very, very vulnerable position. Yeah. And so it is to be applauded.
We've spoken before, haven't we, about the thoughts running around your head, and they start off small and they just get bigger and bigger and bigger, yes, like what you said at the beginning, and then turns into something that feels huge and becomes a real problem. It then gives us physical symptoms, and it sounds like there's a anxiety loop. And imposter syndrome is something that many people feel. They are 2 years in.
Yes, 2 years working, 2 years 5 working, years, yes.
5 years training. So I should imagine it's a lot of training gone into that, and it sounds similar to like we had a lot of training and continual training. It's quite difficult to work out that space, and I felt it where when do you become the professional and not the student? In supervision, I've gone in before and said, I still feel like a student. And that's the imposter syndrome coming in there, isn't it?
Yes.
Despite the evidence, you still feel like you're not good enough, or you're not qualified for the role that you're doing, but you are. You've got the qualification there. You've got the evidence supporting you, the feedback that you've had. But still, there's this cycle.
Yes.
That happens to many of us, especially if we are in a job where there's lots of care to others, and there's potential risk there of damaging others, in the sense of, for us, it's mental health.
Yes.
For nurses,
yes,
or doctors, it can be physical health as well as mental health sometimes.
Yes.
So that risk feels amplified, doesn't it?
That's right. That's right. When another person is involved. So if we start with breaking down and explaining some of these experiences and terminologies. So what is imposter syndrome? So imposter syndrome is that feeling that you are not good enough to do what you are doing, and that creates a fear. And most importantly, the fear comes around even when you have evidence that it is not so. So in here, there's an element where you've got the study, so you've got the knowledge, the skills, you've trained for it, so you've been assessed, and the validation that comes with that being tested, because you said you had training on it, for you to be able to actively be pursuing the career. Somebody assessed you and found you competent to practice your trade. So that's the first validation. So imposter syndrome is there despite that validation. And that's that bit where you're thinking, am I good enough? Okay, that's that question of, are you good enough? Are you good enough to be able to remember your training? Are you good enough to put it into practice? It's one thing to know the theory. It's a very different thing to put it into practical, everyday appliance, to apply it. And that's usually where some of that difficulty comes in. You know the theory, the practice, and that comes with experience. And there is no getting away from that fact that the more you practice at your trade, the more automatic that information comes to the top, because you're using it, you're applying it. So there is a confidence that comes with, okay, I see A plus B. I think we used to do it in maths. What was that thing? Algebra. Yes. X times Y equals,
X equals Y times Z or something. That jumps to my mind.
Right. And you were taught that. You get formulas. You get a case in front of you. Your body and your mind and your knowledge jumps into the forefront when it is needed. So that's what imposter syndrome is. It is the fear that you are not competent to deliver your skills at your job, despite the evidence that you are competent.
Yeah, it comes from a space of self-doubt, doesn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. And so many people experience this, and it'd be interesting if people could comment, have you experienced imposter syndrome, so we can help this person along with each other when we do experience that, because it's so normal and natural, especially when you care about your work that you're doing. So it comes from, we know, self-doubt, linked to a fear of being exposed despite evidence, so being exposed as a fraud perhaps, despite the evidence that you're successful at what you do. It can sometimes be seen as an anxiety loop. So we talk about loops in a lot of things, but it's like a loop that reinforces itself. So in this instance, they are saying that they have time off.
Yes.
And then when they have the time off, it gives them some anticipated anxiety around what happens when they go back. So then that creates catastrophizing thoughts of where they've said about hurting somebody. So that's quite an extreme thought from having that space away from work. And then that looks like some physical anxiety towards going back to work, which is the hyperventilating, which then presents with a urge to avoid. So like, did they say about calling in sick? They feel really tempted to call in sick because of this anticipated anxiety turning into physical anxiety. And then if you do phone in sick, it then reinforces that fear and that risk. So it's your mind looking for risk around this fear of imposter syndrome linked to self-doubt. So we've already mentioned evidence and things like that. So if you were somebody in my room, I would maybe work together with some kind of like reality file. Have you worked on that before, where you list? So you're listing all of the things, your feedback, your positive feedback, and putting it somewhere where you can see that. And if you know this is a pattern, and this is where it's really good because you know there's a pattern there. So we know if you've got time off work, there's going to be some resistance with going back to work.
Yes.
Linked to this imposter syndrome, as you've correctly named it.
Yes.
And so some kind of back to work ritual that you do a few days leading up to going back to work.
Yes.
So that might look like some self-care along with opening your evidence file, your reality file, whatever you want to call it, where it's got all of your positive feedback, a copy of your certificate, some reflections that you've done on successful experiences within your role and things like that. And that can really help you to reframe some of that.
And that's right. Let's go back to a little bit of why this comes up, why you're having these thoughts, why you're having this anxiety, and what anxiety is. So the anxiety is that projection of the future. Anxiety is the worry that something terrible is going to happen in the future. It hasn't happened yet, and from what you're saying, you have evidence that so far nothing has happened, because you're talking about having positive feedback, and that's that a positive file that you have about, okay, so far in what I am doing, do I have evidence that I am able to complete my tasks, my roles, my job? So that is that reassuring your anxiety that thank you very much for protecting me, because that's what anxiety is. It's a protection mechanism. And what is it protecting you from? So let's dive, because I love going back into origins, and if you understand where it's coming from, maybe you can appreciate why you are experiencing it. So our fear as human beings stems from our evolution, from where we started, our survival mechanisms. And we all live in a social community, in a social setting. And from what you're talking about, it seems like you have continued in that social environment because you're worried about harm to other people or a reflection of yourself from your colleagues. So social acceptance is very important. And why is it important? Because if you were not socially accepted in evolution terms, you got kicked out of the tribe. So if we go back to the beginning of time, We needed each other for our mere survival, to be able to survive and thrive in our community, in our tribe. So anxiety, in this case, this fear, is that you are no longer useful to your tribe, your colleagues, or because you're talking about harm, you have caused harm to others. And both of those are alarm signals to your system of, I'm going to get kicked out of my community. So your body is gone into survival mode, into self-preservation. Alarm bells are going off saying, we need to do something here so that we don't get kicked out of our tribe. And so what does it do? It tells you, whoa, hold on, really, do you belong here? And that's that question of, am I good enough? Is this my purpose? Is this a job that I was meant to do? Am I good enough?
Yeah.
And what is the answer? To those in the back of the room who have been listening, what was the answer? You have evidence. You have positive feedback that you are good enough. And that's what Zanny is talking about, having a file with you. You can dip back and say, okay, thank you very much, my anxiety brain, for protecting me, because that's what it is doing. It is protecting you from what it is perceiving as impending harm. There's a threat coming. So you can say thank you very much to your amygdala, that's your threat brain. Thank you very much for keeping me safe. I hear what you're telling me. In this particular instance, I have evidence that I am actually good at what I am doing. And how do I know? I have feedback. Exhibit A, Exhibit B. And so that's that record that Zanny is talking about, having that ritual where when these thoughts are coming up, go back into your filing cupboard and look for those instances where you have been good at what you're doing, and even in the areas where you haven't been good, there's been feedback to support you, to say how you can correct, amend. At least I know that's what we had when we were in training. We had areas of improvement. We've all had it in school, at our school report.
Yeah, and even outside of our training, when we go to our supervision, we're constantly learning. And sometimes in these roles where you are constantly learning, doing your CBDs.
Yes, continuous professional development.
Perfect.
Yes.
I'm dyslexic, so the words and algorithms are never any good for me. So yeah, when we're doing our continued development learning and training, you feel like a student all the time. So it is important to have those areas of reflection. I have in my journal, my working journal, I'll have where I can diaritise endings that have been like positive sessions, so I can look back on that if I'm ever in that space where I'm thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, or I've let someone down, or anything like that might jump into my mind that can easily be catastrophized. I've got somewhere I can go with it, which is why that popped up for me. It's important to remember that sometimes it's settling your nervous system, because when, like you say, when you're experiencing this perceived anxiety, it can be felt as though it's happening in the moment, which is why the hyperventilation comes in, and the panic attacks, as it's known.
Yes.
Public, like.
That's how most people refer to it. Most people will call it a panic attack. There's usually a bodily sensation. Some people, they sweat, they start feeling hot. Some people start feeling cold, which is why I was talking about having a weighted blanket earlier on. So it's learning yourself and asking yourself, how is my anxiety manifesting itself, or presenting itself, or showing itself in the physical format?
Yeah, so it goes back to, what do I feel? Where do I feel it in my body? And what does my body need to settle? How am I going to soothe myself? Is it a blanket? Do I need to shake? Do I need to move? Do I need to breathe slower? What is my body doing, and how do I need to move with my body in order to settle it? Because if you don't feel it and you don't move it, you're just suppressing it, and it shows up bigger next time. So thinking about your nervous system here, and implementing some self-care and some grounding techniques like what we spoke about, and reinforcing the ideas. So with imposter syndrome, in this situation particularly, it feels like a sign that you really care about if you're thinking about harming others, you're caring about the others that you're worried about harming. And that shows me that you're someone that cares deeply and feels deeply, and that your nervous system needs support in that. So it might be helpful for you to reach out to colleagues, or if you've got a supervisor, someone to help you support with that. It's likely that you'll go to them and they'll understand what you're feeling, because they've probably felt it before. And then maybe you won't feel so alone in that, because it can feel quite frightening and lonely at times. If you're wondering, when you're looking around and seeing how successful your peers are and comparing yourself, and they're probably doing the same, they're looking at you and thinking, wow, this person's great at what they do, and internally you're all just treading, you're treading water.
The swan effect.
Gliding on the surface but treading water underneath, and effectively you'll realize within your community that you're not the only one, and you can all hold each other within that space.
And that's what this conversation is about. This is why we started this podcast. It is that experience of speaking out. And more often than not, you will find that the other people in the room are experiencing similar feelings, and they're also presuming that they are the only one. So there will be somebody who would be so relieved to hear that they're not the only one. It just needs the one person to speak out. And before you know it, how many times have we been in a situation where it just takes the one, and then there was the relief, and it's like a physical audible sigh of relief. Everybody relaxes and like, no, you too, but you looked so confident.
I'm smiling, like I'm grinning, because this is our friendship. This is how our friendship was built.
Absolutely.
Around us both going, I'm fine, I'm okay. And then one day us saying, do you know what, I'm overwhelmed. And then our friendship begun. And this is why we're so passionate about what we're doing.
Because we felt that benefit. We felt that benefit of, my goodness, it just needed Zanny to say, and we to say the thing, to speak what was in my mind. It's like mind reading. And the beautiful thing about us as human beings is that we take turns. Today, this is your strong point. Tomorrow, I'll be in a strong point, and we share and communicate, and we learn through that share. Communal sharing. Very often in our trade, because we've learned through our training and our own personal experiences, there are times you mention what you are experiencing and ask the question. So we've allowed ourselves to be vulnerable to say, I'm feeling really nervous right now, and I don't know whether that's me feeling nervous or I'm picking up what you're feeling. And so many times the relief you see on people's faces, they're like, I was sitting here and I couldn't think straight because I was just thinking how my stomach is in butterflies, I've got a lump in my throat. But because you've named it, you've released me from that. I can now be myself. And sometimes the person will say, no. But because you've been vulnerable with them, they can then feel, oh my God, you are a human being. Mm-hmm. You're just like me, a fellow human being. And that breaks down a lot of the barriers that we put sometimes on ourselves on this professional title.
Yeah.
It comes with a loaded responsibility.
Yes, pressure there.
Yes, there is. When at the end of the day, we're all human beings, all practicing this thing called life and humanity. None of us have been here before. Well, maybe in an afterlife, but that's another story for another day. If you're interested, let us know. But there's a leveling of the playing field that allows us to connect as a human being before we can bring expertise in. But to go back to a point that Zanny was bringing in around grounding and soothing, most of the times when we are in that state of anxiety, it blocks your experience and your knowledge and your skills from coming to the forefront, which is why it is so important to first ground and regulate. We call it regulate in our profession, and that just means bringing your heart rate to baseline, bringing your thought processes to baseline, so that you can feel safe. You can feel in a stable environment.
Because until your nervous system is settled, you can't just unthink it. You can't just don't think about that. You
can't wish it away.
And you hear people say that, oh, why are you thinking that for? Just don't think like that. And it's coming from a good place, but it can be quite patronizing, because do you know what? I wish I could take that thought and put it somewhere else. But until your nervous system is settled and you start to understand the whys, which is why we talk about where anxiety originates from, isn't it? Till you start to understand that, you can't question it.
No.
You can't argue with it. You can't reframe the thoughts until you understand them a bit more. So in order to do that, you've got to feel safe. Your whole nervous system, so your body and your mind can work together to reframe and resettle and change the thought process.
You can be more objective, because that is the moment you become narrow focused. So you're just thinking to yourself, I need to get out, I need to get out, I need to get out of this danger zone. And you're not able to pan out. So if you think about it in terms of, if you've seen horses with the blinkers or blinders, I don't know what called blinkers. Yes. You're not able to pan out to look at the bigger picture. And in this case, the bigger picture is, I've got the skills. I've got the skills, I've got the knowledge, I've got the training. And if I don't, I also know what I can do in that replacement. So once you're safe, once you've regulated, once you are more settled, your heart is not beating as fast, because I can imagine that's all you're hearing. Sometimes it doesn't boo, 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 boo. That's a lot of noise. You are thinking, I'm frozen. Sometimes it comes in as frozen. And if you're frozen, it means I don't know what to do now, and this person needs my help, and I cannot come out from where I am. So you need to be able to step back a little bit, ground yourself, feel safer, so that you can be mobile and be able now to respond to what the situation is in front of you. And if you're talking about, because I think you said here, your fear is harm to others, which is the conversation I was coming to jump in when Zanny was saying, you are a caring person. The fact that you are thinking and cautious and worried about harming other people by itself tells us that you're going to do everything within your power and your knowledge skill not to cause harm. Isn't that a really interesting factor about human beings? We and that's your anxiety getting in the way of you looking at it more objectively. But the fact that I'm worried that I'm going to harm this person, it means that I care for them, and I will be aware that I'm about to cause harm, and it will cause me to pause and think and look for an alternative. And it's a catch-22. But at that point, you're not thinking that, because you are on flight mode.
I'm hearing risk here as well in burnout when you're working in this kind of environment where you're constantly having to think about other people. And I don't know if this necessarily fits with where this person is working, but it feels like there's risk of burning out.
Yes.
The focus on everyone else, and then your nervous system heightened because of all these fears going around your head. So that means it's super important for you to talk to somebody in your community, in your space where you work. If it's a supervisor, if it's someone you trust that you work with, it is important to reach out to them so that you don't experience burnout, so you can help manage some of this. Because if you're not managing, there will be burnout, and there'll be longer spaces where you're off work.
If you're off for 2 days, do you feel the same way? If you're off for a week, so understanding that pattern, recognizing, and how do you do this? Journaling. It feels like you're quite self-aware, making those notes, now that we've spoken about it, it could be something that you hadn't registered, but maybe as we're speaking, things will start dropping in like, oh, hold on. When I've got 1 day off, I don't feel this way. But we know 1 day off is literally like a skip. It's like a small bump on the road. Whereas if you've been away for a week, that's proper. Your body, your mind doesn't need those skills, doesn't need that focus. So you are putting it to the back burner. And when you're coming back to work, you are bringing it from the back burner to the front burner, and you're thinking, hold on, is my pan big enough? Is the fire hot enough? Where are the matches? Is the stove even on to begin with? Those are the questions that are coming to your head, quick fire, thinking, what's happening? What do I need? Because your brain had been relaxing. It's been like, oh, I don't need to be on the ball. Yeah. And that's where that ritual that Zanny is talking about is very important. What is your ritual for coming back into work? What are the things that you can begin to put in place that can answer some of the questions that you are asking yourself when you're experiencing that imposter syndrome? Risk of harm to others. You've got positive feedback. Am I good enough? Dig in the file. Is there something in that feedback that says, am I good enough? Is there something in your training? Because you talked about the training. Is there something in the 2 years? Can you go and speak to somebody else that you know or who knows that you struggle with these feelings that can give you that reassurance? And those are the bits where you begin to put these tools, that's what we call them, into your toolkit to allow you to begin to feel better. Something like we do, for example, when we talk about continuous habits, and that ritual, that's what a continuous habit is. Can you create a ritual around getting back to work that is specific for that period of being away from work? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like a phased return. So you're starting the phase when you're at home before you return to work. So it might look like, for instance, for me, if I've had some time off, I know that the day before I go back to work, I might want to have a bath to start with. So I'm settling my nervous system already, so that if anything creeps in, I'm already at a space where I can have the conversation with myself if I need that. And it could look like just checking my diary for the day before so I can know what to expect of that day that I go back to work, and just having a real relaxed time around, almost imagining what it's going to be like the next day when I'm at work, in order to prepare my mind and my body for being at work. So I get into work mode, and then I might have mini rituals. So when I walk in the door to my office space, I know that I'm leaving everything from behind. I have a little shake in between clients, and I ground myself, and that might look like a warm drink in my hand, or I might literally stand with my feet flat on the floor and imagine I'm a tree for a moment, which may be bizarre to some people, but it works for me, and everybody's different, aren't we? So what works for me might not work for Audrey,
Yes.
might not work for the writer here that we've had in the space today, but it might work for somebody else.
And the reason why we emphasize in these rituals is because these are the cues. The body and the brain works on memory. It works on, I've experienced this before. So therefore I am prepared. The reason why you're anxious is because you don't know what is coming. So your mind, your brain is scrambling, trying to preempt what is coming in front. So when you have these rituals, your body is makes those connections. It's like, this is now telling me we're going into this environment, and so I can begin to fortify myself. We've done it, we know, with children, for example, when we're sleep training them. You have those conversations around, have a bath, read them a story, and it's, read them a story, turn the lights down. We do it as grown-ups. I don't know why I'm talking about children.
Preparing ourselves. It's in hypnotherapy, we call it an anchor.
Yes.
In therapy space, we might call it a trigger, whether it's a positive trigger or a negative trigger. It reinforces what our body and brain is to expect. So this ritual, this trigger equals this expectation of me, therefore I feel this way or this way.
That's right.
So
so then know your body now knows what to do. So it's like, okay, so now that so now that you're doing that, you're having a bath, okay, the body's like, okay guys, rally the troops, brain down. Yeah. Come on board, start all those files from your training, start coming to the forefront. You've had a break, you've rested, you're well nourished, you're fed. It's now time for you to come to the forefront. It happens when you're ironing. You've had people who iron their clothes, their work clothes the night before. These are all those little exercises that you do so that your nervous system can slowly come back online, so that it can begin to prepare itself to meet the expectations or the challenges of the day. Some people, you hear them saying, they put on their power suits, they put on their war face, which is their makeup, whatever they have a specific. I know sometimes when I have a difficult meeting that I'm coming in to, that requires, for example, I'm going to meet my mortgage advisor, I put on my power suit because I want to be taken seriously. So that automatically bolsters my confidence, and I'm like, okay, I'm prepared, I'm ready, just by putting on that thing. So that's what these rituals are. It's those little things that alert your system, your nervous system, that, okay, we're moving from this space to this space, and that requires these skills to come online.
Perfect.
Okay? And then you're ready. And then you'll be surprised because your amygdala also says, yeah, I need to take a back seat. Because
your
the
subconscious accepts it.
It knows. Yeah. It knows, okay. All right, guys. Training, step up front and center. Where is my, whatever that thing is? Where is my file? Where is my computer? Where are my computer skills? Everything starts coming on board. We start preparing we are being called on duty, call of duty. That's one of the reasons why people wear uniforms.
Yeah.
Because the minute they put on the uniform, it calls them into action. We see it in the police force. We see it in the nurses. You see it with your therapists. Sometimes you might find that your therapist is wearing the same dress and you're thinking, do they not have another dress? What's going on there? Yeah. But that's because when you step in and you see them in that dress, immediately your body is soothed. It's comforted. It's like,
It's exactly why humans like routine and feel resistance in change. And part of having time off brings a resistance because of change. So hopefully that helps.
Helpful, yeah, thank you very much, because that's allowed us to be able to go in depth into the avenues, and something that we as human beings will struggle with. I am yet to meet a human being who doesn't have imposter syndrome. Most people who have conquered the syndrome have conquered the nerves that have come with it. They still have a little bit of those feelings, but they've just become good at dealing with them, at managing them.
So thank you, everybody. Don't forget to like, comment and share. Tell us what your imposter syndrome looks like if you have experienced it, and please tell us what your reality file might look like, and if this has helped, that would be really good to know.
Absolutely. And share some of your rituals. We are constantly learning, and there is nothing like too few or too little. And there could be somebody who's sitting there thinking, I don't know even where to start with the ritual. So help us out by writing in with your rituals, and we can borrow from each other or adapt them to fit us. But yeah, that's what the community is here for. If we share, we can learn and pick up from each other.
Yeah, that's right. You can be part of our show, part of our talk, by filling in our Google forms. It's completely anonymous. We don't collect any information, so it will be in the comments below. It's on our YouTube channel and also on our Instagram, The Therapy Aunts. I have been Zanny.
And I've been Audrey.
And we have been The Therapy Aunts.
See you next time.